Kazok Taylor Gemara. Tvua lo yizra and the kidneys. The Mishnah said, if you made up to plant tvua, shouldn't plant kidneys because kidneys take more koyach out of the karka. Kazok Gemara. Masnisin masni lei Rabbi Yehuda l'Rabban. Rabbi Yehuda quoted the Mishnah to Rav, and he quoted the opposite to what we have in our Mishnah. And he quoted Tfuah Yizra Eno kidneys. Fakeret, if in fact, if in plant Tfuah, you're allowed to plant kidneys. Zog to Gemara. If in fact you plant for you're allowed to plant kidneys. Amalei, so he told them, the way we read the Mishnah that we have in our Nosach is Tvula Yizra on the kidneys. Amalei loy kasha. Halon v'halahu. Zog to Rashi. In Eretz Yisrael, where it's a more mountainous region, there we're more concerned about the weakening of the karka. Therefore, kidneys is tvua because kidneys takes too much nourishment out of the ground. But in Bava, where they're in the valley, there's a lot of moisture in the land, and therefore the land was much more fertile. It was not a concern. Amalei Rav Yehuda l'Ravin by Rav Nachman. And he said as follows: Rav Nachman, my dear brother Rav, Hani Tachli Devekisna. Raja Shachalayim Shakarin Krishon. I think it's cress. I don't have an exact English title for this, but cress that grow amongst the ksainas. Let me just look at the letter ches here, where maybe we get a translation. It says it's tzemach balalim. It's a leafy type of vegetables. Ketanim small, shetaimim charif. They're sharp. V'gadol pera b'sadish pishta. They tend to grow wild in fields that have flax growing in. So the lach is ein b'hem mishum gezel. If you just take them, there's no din gezel. Why is there no gezel? The reason is because Zakturashi lefishahu mashbiach es abaylim. When you take the cress away, it makes the pishtan grow better, and therefore, by taking them away, you're going to be improving the ksoines, the pishtan, even more than the cress is worth. So the cress is worth $100. By gathering it, you're now going to allow the pishtan to be worth even more than the $100 more because they'll grow much better. Okay, Tosfos makes an important point. Forget cress. Any type of grass you're allowed to pick wherever you are. You know what type of asavim Yeshua put a tana into the distribution of the land that everyone could take? Is things that are worried to feed a behema. The Gemara here doesn't say Yerakos you're allowed to take. That anyone's allowed to take, as Yeshua was master. Aval tachlish in Michael Adam, Osir. Karas, which is Michael Adam, would have been Osir just based on Yeshua's tonight. Elam Cain, who saw the Pishon, but if they saw the Pishon, like we're learning over here, where the crest does more damage to the sinus than they're worth, there you're allowed to take it. Okay, gewalt. Zog to Gemara weiter. Vim hukshu lazera. What if the crest is already developed? So therefore, the crest at this point cannot do any more damage. So then yesh bo mishum gezel. Fil de vekisna nami yesh bo mishum gezel. My time and my the opposite. Whatever damage they're going to do already, that damage was done. So Rash Hutzl's errors, if the Shechalaim are already fully grown, so whatever damage they're going to inflict on the Pishton was done already, now there is no more benefit to the Pishton to uproot it. Therefore, you're not allowed to take it anymore. Oh, good morning, Victor. If you have an English article, how does the article touch the word tachali? I think it's called cress. I'm not sure what vegetable that is. I know that's a leafy vegetable that has a sharp taste, which is what the Tziyonim say. So tachli, hani tachli, do they kiss now? How does the English touch that?
Sorry,
you have to unmute yourself.
I have to find my. I
still don't hear you.
Join
because.
Where's the? What's the first word on the line?
I cannot hear you, but that might have to do with my speaker. It's the wrong speaker. So let me fix my speaker.
It calls it cress. What is cress? Can you hear me?
Pick my speaker. Okay. Could you tell me now what it says?
Cress. It says cress.
You know what cress is?
I'll look it up.
Some type of leafy vegetable. I'm not sure exactly what it is.
It is. It looks like. It's a green garden cress. It's edible herb belonging to the Brassicaceae family, alongside cabbage, cauliflower, and Brussels sprouts.
Like a Brussels sprout.
Native to Southwest Asia and Egypt. It does not look like Brussels sprouts. It looks like, kind of looks like a grass. I can't really see that.
It's not focusing. Okay, now it's focusing. So it's like a grass type of thing.
Yeah.
Okay, gewaltig. Okay, so Dr. Gemara weiter. Amar Rav Yehuda. Amar Rav Yehuda Ravin bar Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman, my dear brother Ravin. It seems like Rav Yehuda and Ravin were friends. He called him my brother Ravin. Hani dili dilach. Those that are mine are yours. V'dilach dili. And what are yours are mine. What does this mean? Zok Rashi. Dili dilach v'dilach dili. Yesh bi'ilana isai. There are some trees that are apparently my trees, that the pairs belong to you. And there are some trees that you have, that the pairs belong to me. What does that mean? We have fields that are side by side, so we're neighbors. The borders come to a height. So the exact border between two properties would actually be a point. So as we get to the edge of our property elevation goes up and it terminates at a point, and at that peak is the exact border between our properties. And the ilana is netuin bahen. And on the slope coming up to the point, there are trees on either side. Yesh mehen netuin bishali sheshroshayin kafavu not kafavu v'natu kulon l'soich. The trees that are planted on that inclined portion, its roots grow straight away from it, which then extend into your property, and therefore the yankin mishalach. So the entire tree, which is in my rishus, all of its roots are actually in your property. And we have some trees that have the opposite scenario. The yesh b'shalach shenoitin l'soich shali, and therefore v'yankin me'artzi. So therefore, the fruits that grow on the trees that are in my property, that are completely being yoinik from you, they're your fruit, and vice versa. This is how Rashi learns this halacha. Tosfos learns that the trees are on the border, and they're yoinik from both sides, but the trunks lean over into one side or the other. So let's go back to the Gemara. Zok the Heilige Gemara. Hanach deli delach v'delach deli. Let me just look at the Bach. Let's look at the Aleph of the Bach. V'nohug, so he just sticks a vav in. V'nohug b'nei Metzia, and the way the custom of the people who live on borders is ilan hanoita lekan lekan. If it leans one way, it belongs to that side. So Rashi learns, and Tosha doesn't like the way Rashi learns because if it's leaning into this side, it belongs to this side. Rashi was for carrot. If it's leaning to this side, it belongs to the other side because the truths are going to the other side. So that's why Tosha doesn't like this shot. But not the lekan lekan. And whatever's leaning to the other side goes to the other side. The itmar. Ilan ha'imid al ha'metzah. A tree that's right on the border. Amarav. Hanoit lekan lekan. Whatever leans into side A goes to side A. Hanoit lekan lekan. The way Rashi understood it is punkvaker. Whatever leans into side A belongs to side B. And whatever leans into side B belongs to side A. Well, Shmuel holds no, regardless, they just split the pairs. A tree that's right on the border, so that seems to support Shmuel. It seems to contradict Rav. This seems to contradict Rav. Shmuel had intellectual integrity, and he will say, no, even though I don't hold like Rav, but you don't have a kash on Rav from the Brisa that says, you know why? Because maybe that's speaking b'memala kol ha'oichakul, kol ha'meitzakul. It fills up the whole meitzah. How does Rashi explain that? The roots were not only on one side, like we were describing until now. It's a case where maybe the tree is planted straight up, right in the border, right on the line, and therefore the roots are equally distributed between both properties. That's why it's split in that case. What is the chiddush of a brayso telling us? That if a tree is right on the property line and its roots exactly are split between each property and the whole trunk is split between the property, it's exactly equal. For that, we need a brayso to tell me that this tree belongs to both sides. Its fruits somehow are mostly in one side. Still, what's the chiddush? If the tree belongs to each part equally, why do I care exactly which side the pears punkt they're on? Look at the tree. So there's a little bit of a chiddush. Because the halacha is you split the tree. But Mao the Tema, you might think, how do you split the tree? You draw a line through the tree that matches the border, which means whatever's on the one side goes to one side, whatever's on the other side goes to the other side, meaning the side with the pears is going to get all the pears. Mao the Tema the Amalei Plagachi, Kamash Lon the Amalei, Machas the Plagasachi, Plagachi. If we're neighbors, who said the line through the tree, the imaginary line with which we split the tree, should be parallel to our border? Maybe we split the tree, but the line through the tree should be perpendicular to our border. And therefore, even though all the fruit are on one side, we'll still split it, and that's the halacha. Amalei Yehuda l'Ravin bar Rav Nachman. Rav Nachi. So it seems like Yehuda liked Ravin, and he always referred to him as my dear brother. I actually had an Italian employee who used to tell me, I love you like a brother, and then he would stab me in the back. But I guess that's not what Rav Yehuda meant. I think you know what I'm talking about. Marco, remember? I love you like a brother, then stab me.
I know, and I'm going to leave it at that.
Okay. Zog to Gemara weiter. Have you ever crossed paths with him since?
I have not, but I'm just thinking about what his saying.
Watching your back.
Sometimes you're better with a brother from another mother.
That's right. Amalei Rav Yehuda l'Ravin bar Rav Nachman. Rav Nachi. Lo yisaz bin ara desmichi l'masa. Let me give you good advice. Don't ever buy land that's close to the city. Why not? Because it's an ein hara. Everybody sees what you have. Everybody sees what you're growing. Every nodnik knows what's going on by you, and it will create an ein hara. Better keep your nechasim in a place where no one sees. We say in the bracha of the balabayis, of the oirach to balabayis, but that's not such a good thing. There's an ein hara. Damar bavo, Amar Rapuna, Amar Rab. Also, you shouldn't be eyeing your friend's field when it's fully grown with crops, because there's definitely a little bit of an ein hara there. So that supports that it's better not have a field where it's going to be too visible to the other. Any afraid to Gemara? Vashkechinu Reb Abba the Talmidei de Rav. Reb Abba met the Talmidim of Rav. Amalu, he told them as follows: Ma Amar Rav Hanikroy. How did Rav decipher, explain these psukim? We have a beautiful pasuk at the beginning of Devarim. Baruch atah ba'ir, gebench you in the city. Baruch atah b'asada, gebench you in the field. Baruch atah b'veyacha, gebench you when you come. Or Baruch atah b'tzesecha, gebench you when you go. That was the favorite nigget.
Favorite line.
Oh.
Uh-huh.
Baruch atah b'veyacha, Baruch atah. That's my favorite. Amru, but Amru loyhaki, and this is what Rav. This is what I said over from Rav. Amar Rav, Baruch atah ba'ir. Your house should always be near the Beis Knesses. This way you can guarantee that someone's always going to block your driveway. Now it means you should be close to the Beis Medrash, that you should be able to always be at the Beis Medrash. Baruch atah b'asada, eventually you in the field, so you see, Rav didn't say that better you should be far away from the city, your field should be far away from the city because of Ayin Hara. Fakir, it's a bracha that you should be craving le'er. So when you start harvesting and bringing your pears into the house, it should be easy. It should be close to the city. Meaning when you come home, when you come home from a business trip, your wife shouldn't be a safek nida. And what about a va'alei nida? So Rashi's v'choskein va'alei nida. You don't want. But there are those who don't stop a safek nida, because a safek nida is much more painful than a va'alei nida, because you have to be perished from her. Yet you're not even sure if you really need to. So it's much more painful. If she's a va'alei nida, okay, no, she's a nida. But she's a safek nida, you have to suffer the tsar of being perished, yet you're not even sure. That's one shot. Other shot they say is, a va'alei nida, a person separates his mind from such a thing, therefore there's no nisoyin. But a safek nida, there's a terrible nisoyin, and it's harder for someone to withstand that nisoyin. And then, Baruch atah b'tzesecha, is your children should be just like you, assuming that you're a good guy. Okay? And he said, Rabbi Yochanan learned a little bit different darshan, a little bit different than Rav. But whatever the case is, Rav here darshan that it's good for your fields to be near your city. How did Rabbi Yochanan darshan? You should always have a basic kisei near your table, so that you can go to the bathroom before a meal and after your meal, because it's not good when you eat to have backlog. This way you can clear yourself before you eat. And after you eat, it's also not good to have to hold in things, because it could come to something called hadroikin, which is a terrible illness. Aval basic knesses loy. There's no special inyan to have your house near the basic knesses. Adarab. Maybe it's better if you live far away from the Beis Medrash. Why should someone live far away from the Beis Medrash? We will see. We will see. Rabbi Yochanan made the Omar schar psiyos yesh. There's something called schar psiyos to the benefit of walking. The further you live from the Beis Medrash, at least on Shabbos you'll get a little bit of exercise. But you get schar for every step that you take walking towards the Beis Medrash. And why does it say Rabbi Yochanan tamei? Because Rashi relates a story in Masechah Soita where there was a woman who lived right near a shul, yet she crossed town to go to the shul of Rabbi Yochanan. So Rabbi Yochanan asked her, "Why do you come to my shul? It's on the other end of town. Why don't you go to the shul next door?" So she said, "I would never walk into that shul." No, she didn't say that. She said, "Because your shul is further away, so I get schar psiyos." Baruch atah v'sada. What's that?
I always thought it was it's the same thing.
Yes. And Baruch atah v'sada, because schar licha means if you have a car. Schar psiyos is if you walk. Baruch atah v'sada, what does that mean? She'unichasecha mishuloshin. You shouldn't have all of your eggs in one basket. You should be diversified. Shlish b'tfuah, a third of your properties, of your fields, should be planted with grain. Shlish b'zeisim, a third with olives. Shlish b'kfanim. That is, Rashi says, to hedge your bets. For instance, if there's a year where there's some type of issue with the wine and with the olives, at least you'll have grain. If there's a year that the problem with wine and grain, at least you'll have olives. If there's a year where there's a problem between grain and olives, at least you'll have grapes. You should be diversified, and you should at least have something. When you leave the world, it should be like when you come to the world. Just like when someone is born, he's born clean of chet, he has a clean slate. When someone is nifter, he should be zeicha to have no averis, he should be avera free. Zok the Gemara. So it's shver, because how could you tell me Rav said that you should have your fields far away from the city because of Ayin Hara? Fakert, we see Rav Darshan that it's good to have your fields near the city. So when you harvest, you shouldn't have to schlep so far to bring your payers in. The V'lo kasha, you know when it's good to have a field near the city? It's when you have a barrier, a gate around it that people can't see. I remember that there was a time where the yeshiva was not giving out checks. They didn't have money. This is in Lakewood. And punkt that time, they were doing a big renovation on Rav Makil Kotler on the yeshiva's house. And could you imagine they're doing a big renovation and no one's getting coil checks? And everyone's walking by his house every day. He's right in the yeshiva looking at the renovation and they're spending money and they're not getting checks. So because of that, they put a big barrier around the whole construction site so you couldn't see what was going on inside. So what did someone do? A chaverman, he took a big sign and he taped it on, like those notices that they post on these walls, and it said, "Your koilo checks hard at work." Sometimes the highway you say your tax dollars hard at work. So there's a big sign, your koilo checks hard at work. So if you have a barrier around it, then it's good that your field should be close to the city because there's no ayin hara. But if it's not going to be covered, you're not going to have a privacy partition. Better your field should be further away. The pasuk tells us, "V'heisir Hashem mimcha kol chayli." Let's look at the whole pasuk. V'heisir Hashem mimcha kol chayli. Hashem should take every sickness away from you. V'chol madvei Mitzrayim haroim asher yadata, and the horrible illnesses of Mitzrayim that you're quite aware of. Lo yisimam bach. Hashem will not put them in you. Unesanam b'chol sanecha. Your enemies, they'll become sick. Zog the Gemara. Amarav. Zu ayin. This is ayin hara. You know what this machal is? Ayin hara. Rav l'temei. This is Rav Shita that most ailments are initiated from ayin hara. The Rav Solek levei kivri. Rav went to the basic forest. Ovid my David. I don't know what he said, what type of lechisha he said, but he said something that allowed him to look at all these mason and know the cause of their death. In other words, COVID. Omar, he said, Tisha v'tisha, 99% of these people, what caused them to get sick and die was ayin ra. The echad, there's only 1% of these mason b'der cheretz that just died because of natural causes. Everybody else suffered an ailment that was initiated because of ayin hara. Ushmul Amar, no, it's not ayin hara. You know what causes all the problems? Ruach, wind. In other words, someone could have any type of sickness that would have normally healed, but the wind that blew on it caused it to become aggravated, and that's what caused it to spin out of control and the person to die. As Rashi says, anything that led to death on the shivas ruach bone, it's because of the wind. Everything depends on what was going on, who the person was. Some people, it's bad for them if the wind blows from the north, at this time. So there's all types of different winds that people react to differently, and they ultimately cause most of the problem. Ula Shmuel, let me stop for a second, because that's an interesting kasha. According to Rav Shita, that everyone dies because of ayin hara. So if you look at the children of Yosef at Tzaddik, who didn't suffer from ayin hara, how come they didn't live forever? So Tosfos asks that. In Paimer, Mkein b'nei Yosef, Shalei Sholta b'hen ayin hara, Hayolahen lichyois hari v'kol hashvatim. How come you don't find that the people from Shevet Judah live longer? You don't find such a statistic that they lived longer. 99% of the people die from ayin hara, and that doesn't apply to Yosef. They should statistically live much longer. When did Rav say that most people die from ayin hara? Those were for people not from Shevet Yosef. The same amount of people died, but most of them who died from their Cheretz. Because you're right, so. Hashem wanted someone from Yosy to die. He sent them other sicknesses that did not come from Ayin Hara. Break the Gemara. Shmuel said it's all with Ruach. What about all these people who are killed from the Malchus? There were many people that used to be killed by the Malchus. Their heads were chopped off. How could you say that's caused by Ruach? So the Gemara, Hanach Nami Ilav Zika Avdilusam. If it wasn't for the wind, even if someone's head was chopped off, it would technically be able to grow back. Wounds would heal. V'chayin, they would live. V'chayina Amar Zud Tzina. It's tzina, it's cold, that makes people die. That's what it means, kol choyli. Kol choyli is cold. Everything's b'shemayim, where you can't control, except for tzinim pachim, which Rashi learns are one and the same. Tzinim pachim are in the path of a krum person, of a crooked person. Somebody wants to watch us, so you're will stay away from them. So you see, you could control it. As Rashi says, tzinim pachim is karhan, the cold that comes from blowing cold winds. We know the blistery Arctic winds. This isn't the winds that Shmuel is talking about. The Shmuel zika beloitzina nami mazekish. Shmuel holds any type of wind does damage, while Abchanina says it's just the freezing cold Arctic winds. The other Rishonim learns tzinim and pachim are two different things. Tzinim is cold winds, and pachim is too much heat. It's talking about two separate things. Yosy b'Chanina Amar zuet tzoya. This is tzoya, dirt. The Amar Mar tzoya sachaitim, the tzoya of your nose, otherwise known as snot, I think. The tzoyas ha'oizen, and the wax that grows in your ear. Ruban kasha. If you have too much of it, that will cause a lot of problems. That's kol chaylu, that makes someone sick. When you talk about to have a normal amount, you need mucus to survive in your nose, you need wax in your ears. Yafa, that is good for you. That's talking about the mara. The mara is a organ in our body near the liver that's where the bilirubin accumulates, which is a bitter chemical. What does it say from our spleen or the bilirubin sac? The gallbladder? Okay, he calls it the gallbladder. It has Rashi Shamarira Shabbat. Gedoyla v'noivas, the gall inside it,
the bile from the
bile
liver
inside it could overflow, begin and can cause septic poisoning to the body. Tanya Mihachi, Machla Zumara is referring to the gallbladder. Why is it called Machla? Shehi Machla Kol Gufa Shalodom. It sickens the entire goof of a person. Dover Acher, another reason why it's called Machla, because 83 sicknesses come from Mara. Let me just think. Machlaf, Mem is 40, Lamed is 3, that's 70, and Ches is 8, and 5 is, and Hey is 5. So 70 plus 13 is 83. So that's where Machla comes from. Machla is 83 sicknesses. How do you avoid the sicknesses that the Mara causes? Pas shachris b'melach. If you have pas shachris with some salt, I don't think a cheese Danish from Tikkun qualifies. The keto in shalmayim and a glass of water, a jug of water mevatloson will be mevatlin. Rashi says an interesting comment here. Pas b'melach mevatloson k'dialfa kamon and keto shalmayim l'mishein lo yayin. Because from Rashi, you're better off with a lachayim. If you don't have a lachayim, then you should have water. But there are those who shouldn't really know. Wine is no good. It's bedavka water that's good for you. There were 13 benefits said about somebody who eats pashachos. Number 1, matzelas minachama. It rescues you from the sickness of overheating, right? We said before that pashachos solves. Uminatina from cold. We'll call that number 2. Right? What's a total of 13? Okay. Umina zikin, and from zikin. What are zikin? Rashi says zikin is hainu ruach damer Shmuel. So that's Shmuel's ruach. So that's number 3. Umina mazikin, and from Shadim, I'm not sure. I mean, Shadim won't bother you, whatever that means. Okay, that's 4. Umechakimas pesi. Umachkimas pesi. It makes you smart, meaning it lets you think clearly. Rashi says, if you're not starving and you're satisfied, you'll think straight. So that's number 5 benefit. Number 6 benefit is really an outgrowth of Machimas Pesi because you're able to articulate your arguments better in court if you think clearly. So that's benefit number 6. Lil Torah, benefit number 7. Ulalamed, benefit number 8 is you could teach because you can think clearly. Udvar of Nishmoyin, Rashi says, people listen to you. You know why? Because you're able to articulate yourself clearly, which is number 9. You'll be able to remember your learning. That will be benefit number 10. Your body won't have an odor if you eat pashachris. Rashi says, zeya, sweat, v'zayim, and smell. V'nizkak le'ishtoi, he will, Rashi says, if he's a Baal Harurim, if his mind tends to think about inappropriate things, since he's feeling good, if you feel good, then he's interested in his wife. I think they call it Hareini Muchad Mazuman, right? So therefore, he'll be with his wife. If he's with his wife, it's as far as I know, you're not supposed to be zakek to your wife in the morning. But here it says he will be zakek to his wife in the morning. If he leaves the house after just having had relations with his wife, he'll be late to work. I mean, the Eina Misava Isha Acheres, then he won't be interested in anybody else because he just got it at home. It also kills any worms that are growing inside his intestines. So that's 13. And there are those who say, it stops someone from being angry and jealous of other people, because if someone's satisfied, he's not going to be irritable. So these are all the benefits of eating pas shachris. Amalei Rabba Bar Mori. We know Milsa Damar Inchi. Where does the Welt know this from? Shit Nuriti wrote, 60 people could be chasing you and they won't catch up to the one person who ate pas shachris. Now this is just a saying, because just because there's more of you, that doesn't make you be able to run faster. But just saying that someone who's eaten breakfast, he will have more strength to run away. It doesn't mean too much. It means to have a little bit. It doesn't mean pashachos after a big bris with scrambled eggs and lox. It means just a little thing to eat. Get up early and eat in the summer. It will protect you from the heat. And in the winter, it will protect you from the cold. So where do you get this from? Right? That's what he wants to know. Where does this come from? They won't be hungry, they won't be thirsty. And therefore, they won't be hurt by the winds or by the sun. What does that mean? Since they don't hunger and thirst, in other words, they had pashachris with kitin shamayim, Amr lay. So he told him, you're telling me the makar is from this pasuk, but no, I have another pasuk that indicates the same point. It says in the pasuk of you'll serve Hashem, and then you'll have bread and you'll have water, and we learn from there that first you get up, you say kriya when you daven, then you eat breakfast, do pas melech, the kitin shamayim. Mikan ve'elech, I don't know, Basi Roisi, Machla Mikabecha, that's going to lead to Hashem taking away Machla. Because Rabbi Lowy said yesterday that a person has to learn before Shachris. Rabbi Lowy said that his grandfather put in his will to his father that before Shachris every day, you should learn at least 2 Blat Gemara with Gemara Rashi Tosus and the Farshim. And I guess if that's what he wanted, I guess he wanted his son to daven at noon every day. But that's what he said. Rav Yehuda told Rav Adam Meshucha. Well, what does it mean, Meshucha? He was someone he was a surveyor. He used to measure properties whenever there was either a purchase or a sale, or there was a Yerusha, or there was the dividing up of an estate. He would measure, he was a surveyor. And he told him, the coil, don't take it lightly. You need to be very, very precise when you're measuring a karka, because every tiny little bit of property can be very valuable. Called porta chazi lekorcha marishka. Every little bit of property you can plant in it something called korcha marishka, which is very, very valuable. Once again, Victor, what is korcha marishka?
Saffron.
Well, saffron is very expensive. Very, very expensive. But rishka means that grows in.
Actually, it says garden saffron, which is the
garden
most
saffron.
valuable species of saffron.
Amar B'Yehuda, Rav Adam Mishucha, Dalet Amos, the Anigra. What about people used to have little channels from the main river that would go around their properties to irrigate them? Now, those had to be not just left as the area of the trench, but on either side of the trench, they had to leave open space that they wouldn't plant right against the trench, because it would deteriorate and degrade, or the word would be erode. It would erode the trench and it would fall in. So therefore, by maintaining some space, 4 amas, and planting 4 amas back, it would protect the integrity of the channel. So dalar amas nigra zilzabu. Don't measure them exact. In other words, you can let it be a little bit more. You can leave a little bit more space. Danhara, the ones that are on either side of a river, which you needed that space so people could tie animals or themselves to a rope which would be connected to a ship in the river, so you needed more room for that. Loisim shechenu klal, don't measure them at all. Eyeball it, meaning there'll for sure be a wider space to allow on either side someone to pull. Yehuda was going according to his own shita. Yehuda, arba amish da nigra, nigra. By the Bnei Nigra, when you're talking about the French that was just there to irrigate, it's only of Bnei Nigra, meaning who's being damaged by the fact that they can't plant along that river? Only the individuals who are along. It's not a river, just like a little trench that's built for the neighbor. So there's a finite amount of people that are going to be giving up their property rights along this trench. So therefore, they can be moichel. So even if you're going to leave more space, the people around this trench will be moichel. But the Nahara, a big river, passes through so many different properties, and therefore, who knows who's going to be moichel? There, the Chula Alma, that belongs to everybody. Uman mochel zakrashi, who is going to be moichel? Zok to Gemara weiter. Rab Ami. Malay Kaspi Nagdi betray Avri Nahara. What happened is what he did was he held that if you find plants or trees growing up against the river, he would allow them to cut down enough that on either side, people who are pulling the ships would have room. And when they would pull a ship, they wouldn't stand straight up. They would lean out away from the ship because the ship is pulling them into the river. They're pulling away, which meant they needed even more space. As Rashi says, he would say, "Malay Kasmi Nagdi betray Avdi Nahara Kutsu." You on both sides of the river. The irrigation trench was only on one side of the river, but this trench the irrigation trench wasn't by a river. It was by a little bit of a trench, by a ditch. That's where it's only on one side. But when it's a river, you need on both sides. Why, Zok Rashi? Because people stand on both sides of a river to pull the rope that's pulling the ship. They're leaning out and away from the boat, meaning they need even more room. When they walk and pull the rope, they're leaning out towards the dry land. So the ship shouldn't pull them into the water. Any amount of space that they need to do their job to pull the ship, dinam lakuts, you can cut it down those trees, uvishnei ivrei hanar, even on both sides, because you need people on both sides. Depending on how the boat is going, they'll be pulling from either side, and therefore he allowed you to cut on both sides. Zok to Gemara, Rav Nosson bar Hoshia, what he did once was cut shitzer amta. He cut 16 amas. That's the width of a Rosh Hashanah. on either side of the river. That's really infringing on the property of the people who had property abutting the river. So also alei b'nei Mishruna dafnua, the people from this city where he cut their trees down, they beat him to a pulp. What are you doing? Ruining our land. Who's over Kishus Rabbim? He thought he has a right to take as much width as a Rishus Rabbim, which is 60 amas. But Veloyi, he didn't have a right to take so much. Hasam be'inon kulahai. By a Rishus Rabbim, you might need more, but Hakam Mishubam Tucha Shleinu, it's only because you need to allow people to set up their ropes and to pull ships. It's only Kamole Kasvi Nagdi. Like we said earlier, it's only the amount of space that people who are pulling the ships with the ropes, they should have enough room to position themselves properly, not necessarily as much as a Rishus Harab. Gewaltig. So therefore, Sagi, that would be enough. Rabbi Bar Avuna, Havalehu Abba, he also had a forest. Aguda de Nahara, or he was pasketing on a forest that was right up against a river. So Amrulay Nekutzmar. So he actually had it himself. So they told him, listen, we gotta cut your forest down so that there's a path on either side of the river. He was only on one side. Amalu, he said, I don't understand. Up the river for me and down the river for me, you didn't cut yet. So why are you cutting mine? When you cut up the river, you cut down the river, so then all you have left is mine to get the full route, then you can cut mine. So Amalu, Kaitu Eloi, Vitasoi, and then and then I'll cut. How did Rabbi Ravuna allow himself to do that? In other words, you're saying first you take it yourself, then come to me. It says first make your own bed, then make other people's beds. So don't say they should fix it first. You fix it first, and then they'll fix it. The Amar Shloka said, "Try to ask me first, clean yourself up, adorn yourself." So why is he trying to be last? So I'll tell you why. Because you know who his neighbors was? His neighbors were people that you wouldn't dare cut their property down, and they're not going to listen to you. So he's saying they're not going to cut anyway. So even if you cut mine, people are still not going to be able to pull their ships. So then I'm not going to cut mine either. Hasam Abba de Parzik Rafilo Hava. We had this fellow once before. He was a big officer for the king, a tough guy, and no one could push him around, and he was refused to cut. So he says, if you can't cut before me, you can't cut after me, why cut my property? The Amar E Kaitu, cut stuff. You get them to cut, because they cut mine. Below Kaitu Amayekos. Why would I allow you to cut my property? The Imam Lahu Ashlayu Mistigalahu. If they're going to be able to if they're going to be able to pull the ship along the river with ropes, then they can go, they can cut through my property. But going on to Amar Aleph, but if they're not going to anyway be able to get through, because this guy is not going to cut, you shouldn't cut. As Rashi says, they're not going to be able to pull their boats along the river on my side. Therefore, they're going to be pulling from the other side. So then why do you need to cut down my trees? When they're going to pass by this guy, this Mr. Rafila guy, they're going to have to go to the other side of the river and pull from there. They're pulling on that side because this guy won't cut. You think when they get up to my property, they're going to suddenly jump over to my side and then jump back? No, they're going to stay on that side. So if they're going to stay on that side, there's no reason for my property to be cut down. Rabbi Bar of Nachman Avaka Azal Ba'arba. He was once going in a ship. Chazahu Abba. He saw a forest, the Koyagudu de Nahara, that was on the other side. Amalahu, the man, who does it belong to? Amalah, the Rabbi Bar of Huna. It's Rabbi Bar of Huna's property. Amar, the Yarasorim Askanim, Hoysa B'mal Azari Shaina. Could you imagine the Talmud Chochem? He's the one who's violating the Torah. He's violating. He's letting his tree stay there. If anything, the Rabbanim listen. It's the other guys who don't listen. Here, the Rabbanim themselves are listening. Amalahu, he told them, Kutsu, cut it down. Also, Rabbi Barafuna. Rabbi Barafuna came and said, Ashkei the kites. He saw that they were cutting down his trees, and we already explained why he didn't have to. You know what he said? He was very sharp. Amar man katsya pakutz anfei. Whoever cut down my trees, his branches should be cut. Now, the Mepharshim should bring down, he didn't mean to curse, he just meant his tree should be cut. Amri, but unfortunately, a tzaddik says something, it has an impact. Kulu shnei de Rabbi Bar Huna, all of the years that Rabbi Bar Huna was alive, who cursed Rabbi Bar Nachman, Rabbi Bar Nachman, he was never able to have children until after he died, because he says his branches should be cut. Okay, we'll stop here. Be'ez Hashem, we will be mamshech tomorrow afternoon. Everybody have a wonderful, wonderful day. It's been such a tiring shvuas that right after that Hashem gives us a Shabbos. Gewaltig.